Thank you so much for joining my videos. This video again I came up with a lot of interesting topics. So in this video we are going to see service connections, how to create service connections, what is service connection, then how to access code base from the other domain, the Azure pipeline, and how to access code base from the same domain and how to create a pipeline. Service connections will play a major role in deploying your code connecting to based from the Azure pipeline. So yeah, the video will be interesting. Let's. So what is service connection? In Azure, a service connection, sometimes we call it as a service endpoint. So it securely links your Azure DevOps projects, pipelines to external services like Azure subscriptions, GitHub repos, Docker registries or databases, managing authentication credentials like service principals. So your CICD pipelines can deploy the code, manage resources and interact with those services without hard coding the secrets. It acts as an authenticated bridge enabling tasks like deploying an app to Azure App Service or publishing images to container registry, etc. Are you scared of a lengthy description or definition? Don't worry. I'm going to explain what is service connection in simple terms. A service connection is a kind of key which will enable your pipelines to deploy your code. Basically, pipelines will do the code deployment. Code will be somewhere else, and your Azure resources will be on your Azure cloud. So now you are trying to deploy your code. Either it can be a API or it can be a Azure function. So the code, it might be in the Git or it can be in the Azure DevOps. So that code you're trying to deploy into your Azure premises. So when you are deploying code, there should be some authentication mechanism. So you cannot allow everyone to deploy the code. So a legitimate person who has, sometimes it's not a person. So the pipelines can be automated. You can have auto deployments. So your Azure resources should have a trusted mechanism to trust the code, whatever it's deploying. So these service connections, a kind of keys, which will be attached with your pipelines, and these service connections will enable the deployment successfully. So by using these service connections, you're trying to deploy your code and you are using it as a mechanism for deploying the enabling the authentication. So what can be used in these service connections? So the service connections, one of the way internally you will use the service principles. We have seen what is service principles in the previous demo or in the previous video. If you want, you can go to that. So these service, when you are trying to create a service connection, you will use service principles as one of the mechanism. Let's do that. So before going further, I want to show my code. My Azure DevOps code is in a different domain and my Azure tenant is in different domain. So how how the bridge between these two domains will happen, we'll see that. So if you see my screen, I created two service principles. So key service connection external, key service connection internal. So these two service principles I created, which I'm going to use for external connection, service connection, and this I'm going to use for internal service connection, just to demonstrate how the things will work. So here, this is the internal. So my Azure tenant, it's in internal. So this is trying to connect a repo which is external domain. This is the external domain to my Azure tenant. So here I have a lot of projects, the organization. So here I have 4 projects, but as a author of these projects, I have to give access to the Azure, like whoever trying to access. So I already did that. So for this test pipeline, if you click on this, you can see 2 members. One is the writer.net and the other one is the Azure tenant. And if you see my web sample, you can see only 1 member. So that means as a author, I have access to it, and I'm not giving access of this project to the external users. But for this test pipeline, I gave access. So how to give the access? You can just invite the people by using the email ID, and they will. Um, Here you can select the projects, and you can give the click on add, so that the persons will be added to your project, and they can make changes, or they cannot make changes, but they can access the code, they can download the code, and they can deploy the code. Now I came into my Azure tenant, so I can see this is the test repo. Azure is my internal uh, main repo, and this is the external which I got access from the .NET. And here I can test pipeline. I can access the code. I cannot access. I can access the pipelines. I can access the board, etc. Let's pipeline stuff. Let's first create the service connection. So I'm in the organization. Go to that project, and here in the project settings, you can create the service connection. So left hand side, you can see service connection. Let's create a service connection. So what kind of service connection? So I'm going to create a service connection for Azure Resource Manager. So ARM templates, the pipeline, click on ARM, the next. So here, what kind of, this will ask for the authentication because it needs to connect to the Azure, whether put the subscription or get everything. So let's authenticate. Once it gets successfully authenticated, so like at which level you are trying to, what is the scope level, whether you want to give access at subscription level or at a management group level or a workspace level. I'm going to select the subscription, and here workload identity is there, but I'm going to use a secret. So this secret is giving a warning because the service principal secret has a overhead of rotating it after or before expiring. So, and it loaded the resource groups also. You can select the resource group, and you can give the service connection name. So which service connection you want to use it? Key external connection. These are optional. So grant permission to all the pipelines. I'm not. Uh, I'm not going to select it. Click on save. Now you are creating a service connection by using the external. See, manage app registration service connection. So when you create this service connection, just go to your Azure tenant and see the app registrations. A new um, service principal will be created. See, authority repository test pipeline. So this has been created by the pipeline itself. So when you set up the service connection, it created this app registration service principal. Now under your service connections, you can see key service connection external. So let's create some pipelines now. So how you are doing the same for um, internal domain? So go to the Azure DevOps. So here, this is the test repo. Azure is the repository, and you can see the only one author there. It's the internal. So do the same thing uh, for the internal, how to create the service connection. Let's create service connection for the internal project pipeline. Service create a service ARM asks for authentication. Okay, let's do that for internal project repo. Click on service connection, create service connection, ARM, next, give the authentication details. Once the authentication is successful, you can select the resource group, come here, service principal. I'm going to same. So these are optionals, and here I can grant this service connection for all the pipelines. For external service connections or external code, this option will not be there. For internal domain code, you will have this option, but I'm not going to give select this. So just simply click on save. So your service connection get created successfully. You can see that. Go to the app registrations. You can see the repo name, and this is the project name, and this is the um, unique key, and a service principal get created. So now we created service principal successfully. Now we'll go ahead and we'll create the pipeline. Now go to the pipelines, create a pipeline. So here I'm going to select Azure DevOps, and you will get the project name. So here you can start starter pipeline, or you can use existing Azure pipeline YAML. This will display all the pipelines. So I have test YAML. Click on continue. Now you can run the pipeline. So this is basically a video for how to create your pipelines. And in the next videos, we will see how to deploy the code by using the pipelines. So um, this video, we concentrated on how to create the connections, service connections, and how to create the pipelines, and how to provision the service principal, create the service connection. So that's it. In this video, we have seen how to create, what is service connection, how to create service connection, and what authentication you are using to create service connection. So I used service principal as a mechanism for having the secret, and how to access the code base from the other domain, and how to access the code base from the same domain, and how to create the pipeline. So in the next videos, we will see more on how to deploy the code by using, first we will see how to create the components like a resource group, or a secret, or a service bus, or a event grid. So there are different kind of Azure resources we have, and those resources we will see how to create by using the pipelines. You will see more videos on how the uh, pipelines will be used for creating various Azure resources. That's it. Thank you all for watching the videos. Please share your feedback. Your feedback is very important. So, and also suggest the topics you want to learn. Definitely, I'll consider your feedback and suggested topics, and I'll make the videos. Sit tight and watch out for the next videos. Thanks once again. Happy coding.